Hello, my fellow sovereign nodes. Before we get started today, I wanted to make a quick mention about the one-on-one healing sessions that are being offered by members of the Decentralized Consciousness community. There are currently 7 of us that are offering these amazing sessions. I've done multiple with each member and have found that in each case, they have met me with their specific, unique talents exactly where I needed and what I needed help with. If this at all resonates with you, sparks your curiosity, check out bitcoin-consciousness.com/sessions and reach out to one of us. Thanks for listening and enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the Decentralized Consciousness podcast. Today on the show, I have Ioni Appelberg. Ioni, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So you and I met recently on the May the 4th Spiritual Bitcoiners panel. And I've been following you on Twitter for quite a while now. And you recently released a book, which is awesome. And the thing that really struck me about you in our conversation is the balance of rationality and science, but yet being willing to dip into the spiritual. Because what is so interesting in this Bitcoin space is that there is a very large sect of Bitcoiners who really, really are attached to their rationality. It's this ethos of don't trust, verify. But then there's the sect of Bitcoiners who are kind of, I really don't know where it starts, to be honest, but they are willing to approach something deeper. Because I think for a lot of Bitcoiners, they are willing to be brutally honest with themselves. They're willing to accept brutal honesty. And so they're willing to look into their emotions with this incredibly amazing technology. And I think that it goes from being something of kind of like a get-rich-quick idea based in don't trust, verify, and it moves into something so much deeper. And a lot of people want to reject that, but a lot of people also are willing to go deeper. And at the beginning of our conversation on May 4th, you really hit this hard. You said that actually spirituality is, there is a lot of scientific basis for it. And one thing I wanted to talk about in depth today is your experience with psychedelics as well, which is obviously very scientific. We have a lot of understanding of what's going on biologically, but I'd like to go deeper into that too. So there's a lot of stuff I want to get to today, and I'm excited to talk about it. So why don't we begin by just talking a little bit more about your personal background, maybe get into this process of becoming a Bitcoiner to writing a book, and let's just get more deeply into what it's been like for you since the introduction of this new monetary technology.
Thank you for seeing me, Caleb. That's a beautiful gift. And well, for me, I'm class of 2016. I read the white paper in 2015, but it didn't click for me until much later. I began my journey down the Bitcoin rabbit hole in 2016. And initially, you explore Bitcoin on the surface level, which surprisingly means diving into its the technical aspects of Bitcoin. That's how you understand it at a superficial level, I think. And when you sort of understand what Bitcoin is from the technical perspective, you can expand your cognitive horizons about this entity and see that it's actually a new form of economic operating system, which people radically underestimate what this means. Society, the world, is an economic ecosystem. That's what our society and our world is. And Bitcoin is an entirely new kind of economic operating system. As I've argued plenty of times, Bitcoin is Kardashev type 1 money, which is, if we zoom out, the importance of this for human civilization cannot be understated. So I began looking at the technical aspects of Bitcoin, had a lot of help from Andreas Antonopoulos, and after exploring that part of the rabbit hole, I started to see the philosophical aspects of Bitcoin, such as it being an economic psychedelic, Kardashev type 1 money, how it's something that is part of your organism, how you become your Bitcoin, all these kinds of ideas. Also the economic ideas of everything there is divided by 21 million, all of these ideas. Then after exploring the philosophical aspects of Bitcoin and what it means for property rights, for the human condition, then I started to dive deeper into the spiritual aspect of Bitcoin. How it actually, by being fundamentally ethical money, how it makes you a more empathetic and conscious, more awake, because it aids you in a financial awakening by just acting as a mirror to our current economic operating system and exposing its inherent limitations and flaws and showing that there's an alternative to think about things. And how it does this to society and to you, and how it fosters low time preference, making you go on encouraging you to go on a spiritual journey and a mental health journey and a journey where you perfect your body. And what was very interesting for me is that I feel that I just recently reached a little deeper, a little farther in this spiritual journey that I'm on. And that is that I've through Bitcoin as a psychedelic mirror, opened up my mind and my spirit to the idea that I have been exercising the wrong archetype of who Ioni Appelberg is. Ioni Appelberg is an idea, doesn't exist. But when you exist within that idea, you exercise some kind of archetype. And I thought that my primary archetype was to be a medicine man in society, that I had that role. I have a shamanoid personality type and became a medicine man. And I worked as a medical doctor for 7 years now. I'm a specialist in family medicine. But Bitcoin has helped me see that this is not my primary archetype. My primary archetype is to be a philosopher and a writer, because I see now that I can do more by providing ideas and than I can sitting in my office and making sure that the people have happy kidneys. So Bitcoin really helped me define my path. So I took a step towards radical self-alignment, and I can now more than ever before accept that my new life will cost me my old one, that I have to leave my comfort zone, my sense of direction, some of my relationships and friends, but it doesn't matter, because the people who are meant for me and the life that is meant for me exists when on the other side. And when you build a new comfort zone around the things that actually matter to you, that is when you move forward. And when you take a real step towards radical self-alignment, everything that you lose in that change is something that was built for a person that you no longer are. And remaining attached to your old self, your old life, it's a form of self-sabotage. But radical self-alignment requires courage. And that self-sabotage, it stems from a deep control issue. It's the ego resisting the change. And so radical self-alignment is not easy. It is inherently rebellious, and it requires courage. So on a practical spiritual level, that is where I am right now. I'm working on honoring the human experience, being present as much as I possibly can, and honoring the human experience by seeing my primary archetype and making improvements to my life to achieve radical self-alignment. And this means that I write, I talk with people like you, I read, I meditate daily, and I try to keep my head above the surface for much of the day as I possibly can. Just be present. I set long-term goals. I put myself through very difficult tasks. Like before we started talking, we talked about calisthenics and that type of journey, a very spiritual journey, a very difficult one. And of course, psychedelics. Having a session or two a year where you have carefully prepared dose, set, and setting can be a wonderful, wonderful tool to show you things about yourself and about reality and the human condition that is not necessarily going to be accessible to you without these tools. And so I suppose that's where I am with regards to Bitcoin and spirituality at this moment in time.
Yeah, that's quite a transformation for sure. So how would you define self-love?
Everything that you have is alone. Everything that you have is alone except for your consciousness. You only borrow the matter that makes your body, your DNA. It's not yours. It came from other people, and you are passing it on, or it goes back into nature. It's something that you only have for a while. So it is with every relationship, every circumstance, every material possession, everything that you have is alone. And recognizing that and knowing that everything that you have, you're going to lose. And allowing yourself that pain in order to have the love, and just accepting that is life, that life is love, and life is loss. Allowing yourself the anticipatory grief of loss and feeling all of the setbacks in life, allowing yourself to see the pain clearly and to be truly present in both pain and love, honoring the human experience. Self-love is about true acceptance of what is. Because only when you deeply accept what is, can you experience love. And that love towards everything that you have outside of your body is a love that is also directed at yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Self-love is, there's no substitute for it. It is the basis of presence, of accepting what is.
Yeah, I was thinking the other day that the basis of, let's call it a crisis, the fiat crisis, the basis of what we're seeing all over in the world that we have built, is the lack of self-love. And depending on how you model reality, right, the belief may be that we chose to have this human experience where the natural state of things is everything is one, everything is perfect, there is unconditional love to be seen, felt, and experienced everywhere. But humanity chose to experience love as being something separate, to be something to be experienced outside of oneself, or to feel separate from it for a time. And now it seems to me, and I think that Bitcoin is actually a symptom of this instead of like the key to unlocking it. Or it's like, I think Bitcoin is downstream of what humanity is actually moving through, which is we're moving back into unconditional love for the self. Because unconditional love for the self reflects outwardly to unconditional love for others. And what I've been trying to figure out, because, and I think you can really relate to this as well, because of your work with your physical body, what I'm trying to figure out is how to love myself in those times where I feel drawn to do things that I know are not higher consciousness behaviors, the things that aren't my authenticity, the things that tend to take me away from self-love, right? Which are, watching TV or scrolling the Twitter news feed and looking at all the doom and gloom, and or eating a bunch of food that I know will be the culprit of a big lower consciousness string of behavior. And I'm trying to figure out, how do I balance, the desire for, yeah.
Caleb, relax, brother. You are a human being. You are a human being. I see exactly your point, and
Mm,
I feel it, but you are not a robot.
right.
It's so important to, this is what I'm talking about, acceptance of what
Mm-hmm.
is. You are a magical being that has evolved through millennia, from bacteria to rodents to apes, and you're still an ape. And look at where you are. Uh, you are part of this incredible biological journey. And the fact that you have now even reached beyond your biology and entered the spiritual realm how magical is that? Um, how can you not love every part of yourself that is capable of having these experiences? Because you did not come from a higher state of energy. You came from pretty unenlightened monkeys not very long ago. You have come so far, and you now have the capacity for presence, for mindfulness, for low time preference. You have a time machine in your mind. You are a spiritual being, and you see that now. You have that cognitive capability. You have expanded your cognitive horizons like no other entity in this world. You are truly unique as a human being. A pigeon does not have the cognitive horizons in any facet of lives that supersedes us, except for maybe flying. And then the fact that you can do mathematical calculations, the fact that you can navigate the world with emotions, what an incredible sensory organ emotions are. How they, unlike vision, produces a visual perception of the world that guides you through it. You have all of this, and you have metacognition about these processes. You're not a robot, you are a human being. Eat that damn ice cream, sit on your couch. It's fine. It doesn't matter. What matters is what you believe and what you do on a regular basis. Your routine matters. You go to the gym, you meditate, you exercise kindness and love and presence. And you do that as much as you possibly can. And the more you do it, the farther you reach. But there's very few people who don't, from times to times, dip their head back under the water and have high time preference behavior and forget to be present, because that is our reality. It's where we come from. We didn't always have this. We're just now, as a species, discovering all these things. We are young as spiritual beings. It is okay to be a human being, and you are not a robot.
Yeah, it is. I appreciate all of that. It is really amazing the well intentions of personal growth and self-improvement can become quite toxic almost. They can go to the extreme where they're almost symptom of the lack of self-love, right? Because we can be, and I think it's easy to find love in it. However, it can be so addicting to find pleasure in telling oneself, okay, I didn't watch any TV today. I wanted to, but I didn't. And I resisted the food that I really, really wanted to eat, the delicious cupcake.
Well, the marshmallow test is always going to be there for us to gauge where we are, how present we are, how far along we are on our spiritual journeys, and how disciplined we are in our routines. But I have a slightly different perspective on this. So I don't think that it's lack of self-love that produces high time preference behavior. But rather, I think that it's the ego holding you back, and that the self-love actually exists beneath it. But you just haven't exercised it enough to have precedence over the strength of your ego. So I think the self-love is always there. And this is actually something that I saw about myself in my last psychedelic ceremony, which is what it was profound for me. I saw that I have a control issue that I previously hadn't recognized. What a profound part of my being, my entity, this control issue is, how it has given me quite a few wounds that now that I see this issue, may actually be able to heal. But I have a deep-seated need for control, which is why some of these psychedelic ceremonies have been terrifying for me, because you have to let go of control completely and just relax into what is, accept what is, and follow along and just glide downstream. Let somebody else take the steering wheel for a bit. This self or this control issue, this deep-seated need for control of your body, your mind, your reality, your relationship, your comfort zone, everything that you have. It's not, your high time preference behavior anchors you in a type of reality that you may not feel resonates with who you are at the deepest level. But that's not from lack of self-love. Your self-love just hasn't manifested as radical self-alignment yet. But just being on that path and doing your thing, finding a routine that is in line with your primary archetype, and being consistent, not committed, committed too, of course, but consistent in where you want to go in life. Setting the compass, which I find psychedelics are also great for, just recalibrating your compass in life so that you can more clearly define your primary archetype, your personality, and the circumstances that you want to build, this idea of who Caleb or Ioni is. So I think that self-love is actually always there. It's just things that get in the way.
Yeah, I love that perspective. So can you set the stage for me here when it comes to one of these psychedelic sessions? What's the physical setting? Is there someone with you? And how does it all work?
Well, I think you can do it in plenty of ways. It depends on what your goal is, really, and I think there are as many types of settings and ways of doing psychedelics as there are people. I remember my very first session ever that was with a relative of mine, and we just had a medium amount of LSD and had a wonderful experience in nature, connected with nature, connected with each other, with ourselves, and just got to experience the beauty of nature in a way that I hadn't before. And that was a great way of dipping your toes into this space, into the space of psychedelics. It was well planned, beautiful, and nourishing, healing. Not profound, but profound in the sense that it opened a door to something else. Then, for my most recent experience, I got an Airbnb with a friend who is a monk, and we had 3 days planned. So first day for planning and setting your set, and setting, just planning everything, planning your set and setting. So I believe your audience is very well versed in all of these terms and are probably experienced and very knowledgeable. But what setting refers to is, of course, the environment in which you are. Are you going to be indoors or outdoors, day or night? What kind of food will there be prepared? What is the environment? Is it in nature, on the grass, in the mountains? Is it in your bed with the eye mask and headphones? So you plan all of these things, and then your set is, of course, how your body feels, how your mind feels, how present you are, and your purpose of doing this trip, this ceremony. What do you want to get out of it? What is the purpose of going through with it? By defining all these things, and you not only avoid challenging trips, but you also get something out of it. You get what you want out of it more likely. It's like going to school and knowing what you want to do with your life. If you go to school knowing that you want to be a doctor, you might focus on that from the start, and you might get ahead. If you just go to school and you don't care, you're just there for the purpose of it, you might not get as much out of it. And so for this last time, I earlier this spring had an Airbnb with my monk friend, and we set the setting, a very nice Airbnb in the woods, in the forests here in Sweden. And I had a pretty big dose of LSD, and I had prepared so well. I had done my stretching, my yoga, my meditation, and I have thought about everything that I wanted to explore. And it was a wonderful, wonderful session. A lot of tears, a lot of beauty, a lot of connection with nature, with cosmos, with myself. And here I got to see things about myself that I hadn't seen before. And that's the trip day. And then the third day is integration day, when you talk about these things. And for this, I had ketamine as a tool for integration. So to distance yourself from the actual experience, to get a clearer perspective on what you just went through. So that's how I typically prepare, like that range, being just on a lower dose in nature, and a lower dose, I consider like maybe 100 micrograms, and then going for a deeper session where you can have someone with you, and you have eye masks and an eye mask and headphones and a prepared playlist, and you have everything set, and you're going deeper. For that, maybe 300, 400, 500 micrograms.
Wow. So you're very consciously setting the intention and setting the setting, but it sounds like you're kind of doing it in flow. So when you arrive at the Airbnb and you take the time to feel into your environment and feel what kind of session might unfold for you, you get a sense of, okay, yeah, should I be laying down with my senses dulled, or should I be outside? So it's interesting because it's very far away from what mainstream society would have us believe about doing psychedelics. You know, I think the mainstream would have us believe that it's merely an instrument for pleasure, but you're being highly, highly intentional before you go into these sessions?
Well, pleasure is part of it, in the same
Mm-hmm.
sense that pleasure is part of going to the gym, and or having a difficult conversation with your partner. I mean, there's pleasure in these things because there's a
For sure.
reward, and there's beauty in being present in something that is difficult. I mean, sure, psychedelics are a wonderful tool for myriad of things. All from you can absolutely use them for just what I hate the word, but recreationally, where you use it to hide in your senses and just partying, basically. But you can also use them for. It's a wonderful tool for many things. You can use them to connect with nature. You can use them to explore your mind, because what they show you is that your mind really is this. It's this vast space, this mansion where there are rooms that you haven't seen before, and psychedelics guide you into these rooms. And here it's very important that you don't put up resistance to what's in there, because when you start to feel like, a lot of people can get scared. I do, when during the liftoff, and to see like you're not sure where this is going to go, and that can be scary. But what is it that produces this fear? Well, it's your sympathetic nervous system activity, increased activity in your sympathetic nervous system, the flight or fight part of your nervous system. And with increased activity there, you're going to have bodily responses and psychological responses that produce fear. And you will naturally set up resistance to that. But this is where you have to learn to let go, to allow yourself full acceptance of what is, and to be present in this and just let yourself flow. Because if you set up resistance, what is that? That is increased activity in your sympathetic nervous system, meaning that the trip will only get more challenging the more you resist it. You will get more and more fearful of the experience. And that can cause you to land in a pretty bad place. You don't want to panic when you are in these states. You just have to let it be what is.
Yeah, the audience might be getting tired of me saying this, but the ego, and as you had said at the beginning of the episode, the ego is not really us, right? It's something that it's an archetype, it's an identity, and when anything is defined, it has what it is and it has what it is not. And what I'm discovering through my own spiritual journey is that when the ego's edges get triggered, so that line between what it is and what it is not, it's not really a line so much as it's kind of a gray area. And this gray area makes the ego very, very uncomfortable, right? The ego is this amazing piece of energetic technology because it is able to defend itself and it has a survival instinct. So when the closer and closer we get to the edges of our ego, the more it fights, the more we have, we tell ourselves lies, and the more that the ego will try to move back into its identity in order to avoid being challenged. Because once it gets challenged and once the truth begins to break down the walls of the ego, it doesn't survive anymore, and it doesn't like that. And from what I understand of psychedelics, because I believe it's a tool for challenging the edges of the ego all of the time. And yeah, you could, I suppose, use it recreationally and allow the ego to experience it in certain ways. However, when there are times when the authentic self is ready to come through, or this power that's greater than the ego is so strong that it overwhelms the ego, I suppose that's maybe what people define as like a bad trip, right? Where the ego is constantly like, no, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. Get me out, get me out, get me out, because it's being challenged all the time.
Yeah. I have a small issue with the spiritual community, and it is this fervent, almost, it's almost like a hatred against the ego. People are fighting it tooth and nail, and I don't support that fight. The ego is one of the most important psychotechnologies that we have ever developed. Your organism would not be alive without your ego. But now the world has changed. We now live in a world where we can relax. We're not constantly threatened by lack of calories or violence or illness. We have the space and the safety to explore the spiritual parts of our beings. And that is why we are now evolving into spiritual beings, because we are ready for it. We are in a very unique and exciting place in human history where we actually can do these things. And this we see this has existed in small parts of the world for thousands and thousands of years, where there have been enlightened people, because we haven't really changed much as human beings in the past 300,000 years. And in the past 70,000 years, we had a cognitive revolution that really changed a lot of things. And now we have finally stabilized society and everything around us, so that we have created a safe space for us to explore the spiritual realm almost on a global scale, which is a unique time in human history. And it's very exciting to be part of it.
Yeah, it's funny, as you were speaking, what came to me is that you're almost fighting the ego with another ego.
Yeah.
Because fighting and resisting is not self-love, as we spoke about. And if the natural state of things is self-love, then a resistance would be coming from something that is not like the authentic self. Yeah, and so, I would consider myself to be spiritual. So myself as a spiritual person who is resistant to my ego a lot of times, not knowing whether to partake in some of the recreations in life, and to beat myself up for not being present. That's almost like the spiritual ego fighting this other ego.
No, that's the regular ego coming back in through the back
there
door.
You go. Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, it comes in the back door, and it tricks you. The ego is, like I said, one of the greatest psychotechnologies that we have. It's an intelligence, and it's very intelligent. It's very capable. It governs our entire lives for most of us, and it is sneaky. It will come at you through the back door and trick you. That will happen. But it's fine. All you have to do is honor the human experience. Be present and honor the human experience. Set long-term goals. That's fine too. Be a human being. It's the most spiritual thing we can do.
Yeah. So, you had mentioned evolution and, growing from a single cell organism to a rat to a monkey, and now to an organism beginning to explore itself. Is this the natural process of evolution? And if so, where could we be heading?
Well, it depends. It is our evolution, but if you look at, for example, the evolution of AI, it is evolving in the exact opposite direction as human beings. We began as biological entities that explored the space around us. The first kind of intelligence we gained, besides biochemical intelligence within the cells, was spatial intelligence to move around the environment. Then we gained other kinds of intelligences like cognition and psychotechnologies, language, the idea world, written language, the ability to create things. And then we learned creativity. We learned poetry. We learned music. We learned to explore our emotions. And then we found spirituality. That's not how AI and robotics are doing it. They began with solving the creative tasks and the intellectual tasks, and they're only now beginning to explore the physical world. So they have a different kind of evolution. It's kind of like we're moving in opposite directions, but and we're also exploring different types of cognitive horizons, and that's part of our evolution. We are exploring our cognitive horizons with the inherent limitations of our biological brains, whereas AI has different types of cognitive horizons, and they can do different things. When it comes to humanity, not only do we have to look at our own biological evolution, but we also have to look at the evolution of civilization, because those go hand in hand, but they are very different things. So we evolve through random mutations in our DNA, and most of the mutations don't have an impact on your body. Some of them are harmful, and some of them are beneficial. And this, over millennia, creates there's a constant feedback loop between a biological entity and the environment, where the random mutations in the organism will either result in the organism being better adapted to the environment than its peers. And if these random mutations are beneficial, then you have a natural selection for that entity, that species, with some higher degree of probability. It's not set in stone. Even you may have all the survival advantages you can imagine, but unless it actually plays out in a favorable way, it doesn't matter. So it's just a probabilistic thing. But over time, this has resulted in us. So there's no goal to evolution. The fact that we have intelligence and speech and psychotechnologies like the written language and so on, these are all just probabilistic things that have helped us navigate the physical world and survive and produce more offspring. So, and we've reached a stage in our evolution where we are intelligent and capable enough to exercise control of our own biology and our environment to a degree where natural selection no longer plays a role. That I want to be very careful here and say that evolution is ongoing. Evolution does not change. Evolution is evolution. That's a fundamental engine for change. But natural selection, through random mutation and as an adaptation to the environment, is not the same as it used to be for our species, because we now have modern medicine and we control our environment. So the next iteration of Homo sapiens sapiens is not going to be another kind of human being that evolves through natural selection into another post-human being. But it's going to be, we have taken natural selection out of the hand of evolution and put it in our own. So we are now the masters of our own biological fates. Meaning that what I foresee is probably that as we become a multi-planetary species, and we have a permanent presence on Mars, and we'll build an underground city on Mars, and we have research bases on the moon, we are going to have to adapt our biology to the lower gravity and to the radiation. And this is going to help us advance medicine and produce a different kind of human being. So that, and just imagine being what you are now, to being able to be in a low gravity environment for an extended period of time and not get sick from the radiation through gene manipulation and technologies like CRISPR. This is the next iteration of human being, how we adapt ourselves to the environment that we want to create. So we are no longer slaves to the environment. We control the environment and we control ourselves. So whatever we want to build, we have to also adapt ourselves to that, and we are now in control of that. That's the trajectory that human beings are on in terms of their own evolution. So that's fascinating. And civilization has another kind of evolutionary trajectory where we discover ideas that shape how we govern society. Like imagine today, like living in an era with kings and queens. And you have professions like knights, bailiffs, thanes, like all these kinds of ancient professions that no longer exist, and the way that society was organized. Very medieval and primitive in our eyes, but that's because the ideas hadn't been born yet, how to organize society like we have now. We just hadn't gotten to that stage yet, and we didn't have the technology. But now we have transformational technologies, Kardashev type 1 technologies that unify us as a species on a global planetary scale, from the internet and the Bitcoin network. Like these kinds of technologies make us a Kardashev type 1 civilization, and that is the ultimate what would you call it, like the scale for how the progress bar for the evolution of civilization is the Kardashev scale. And we are now at a point in our civilizational evolutionary path where we again have gained control over that trajectory, and we can now consciously put effort into our advancement up the Kardashev scale. We can act as a Kardashev type 1 civilization. We have the tools and the knowledge to make a conscious effort to be on that level, to act the part and advance as a civilization. Yeah, so those are the evolutionary paths of human beings and civilization.
So what needs to change then? Because where we are right now, we're seeing a lot of violence, and maybe this is the peak of it, I guess. But where we've evolved to this point is a lot of discourse, a lot of violence, and a lot of high time preference behavior. So what needs to change for us to work our way up this progress bar?
Well, it fluctuates, right? It fluctuates. It's not a steady progress from high time preference to low time preference, to from mediocrity to excellence, from being well adapted to your environment, or from being hardly adapted to your environment to being highly adapted to your environment. It goes up and down, but the trajectory is what counts. The trend is what counts. And now I think that if you zoom out and look at humanity and civilization, yes, we have some high time preference behaviors and culture now that we didn't before, and feels like we are declining as a civilization. And we have been in a decline since the 1970s. I argue this in my book, Abundance Through Scarcity, that we are on a civilizational decline since the 1970s. And this is a natural type of decline, but the danger with declines is that they can actually lead to collapse. But we have the means to protect ourselves against collapse now. So what needs to change? I think, like, from a long enough distance, you can see that we are still just at the beginning of infinity. We are still a primordial soup. And what will become of us, who knows? And the fact that we have some high time preference behavior and culture now, well, it doesn't really matter in the long term. Doesn't really matter in the long term, not for our species as such, not for our civilization. Because I believe that the overall trend is upwards. We are moving towards a lower time preference. So if you take the scale, if you expand the scale and look from when we were hunter-gatherers to when we were farmers to industrialists, to that we had the first, second, third industrial revolutions with digitized society. That was the third industrial revolution. And over time, throughout these eras, we have increased our time horizons. We have lowered our time preference. And that is sort of the evolution of, that goes hand in hand with the evolution of civilization and society. And we are still making great strides in technology and the idea space and the philosophical and spiritual space. Like, we are now all part of the new. We are part of the Artemis generation, the generation that will build a permanent presence on the moon. We are part of the generation that sent the James Webb Telescope up to explore the depths of the history of the universe. We are part of the civilization that has the Bitcoin network, an entirely new kind of economic operating system for the entire world. An open and neutral monetary network that uses money that cannot be corrupted to steal from you. And if implemented correctly, cannot be corrupted to spy on you, and that cannot be corrupted to fund wars. Money that helps us coordinate our workforce and our resources on a planetary scale and fosters cooperation across generations and continents. And it does so on a planetary scale, on the level of a Kardashev Type 1 civilization. We have all of these technologies and ideas now that we didn't before, which means that we are on a positive trajectory. We have modern medicine, we have AI and robotics. And this is probably going to be the last non-robotic summers of our lives, because the robots are going to exceed humans in numbers by a vast amount. I'm hoping and believe that we will see something like a ratio of 5 robots to person in not a very distant future. So we are working hard as a species, as a civilization. We are moving forward. I'm not worried about our species. We still, as the social biologist E.O. Wilson said, we still have Paleolithic brains, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. And this doesn't square. We have to update our institutions, and we need a global spiritual awakening, and we need cognitive enhancements, which I believe that intelligence on demand, when intelligence becomes extremely cheap and extremely accessible through AI, that is going to spur the next. Well, it's gonna help us write the next chapter of human civilization. So I'm optimistic about the future. I look forward to it, which means I'm optimistic about it. And we are now freer than we have ever been. We can talk about these medicines that have been prohibited. We're still in the great era of prohibition. There's a war on consciousness, but we are waking up from this as well. It's been we fell into this dark hole. We had the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages. Now we are sort of on the verge of entering the dark economic ages if things play out wrong with Bitcoin. And we have been in this great era of prohibition and this great war against consciousness. So we have some dips. That cannot be denied, but we are moving out of them, I think. We just have to tread very carefully now. Because like if we look at Bitcoin has the potential to be the most Orwellian dystopian surveillance tool ever conceived by humankind. If we don't implement the ecosystem of Bitcoin correctly, we could see it become a devastating threat to freedom and society. Bitcoin, the discovery of absolute mathematical scarcity and leveraged as money in the physical world, is an idea that cannot be corrupted or it's not going to go away. It just is. We have discovered absolute mathematical scarcity through a social consensus on a sufficiently distributed network. So we have that, and that cannot be corrupted. But the ecosystem around it can be. It can become a surveillance apparatus, unlike anything we could ever have imagined. So we have to be careful there. And so the path ahead is not without dangers. But all in all, we are now in a place that is better than it has ever been, and we can move forward. We are moving forward. We are evolving as a species and a civilization. And I believe that we are evolving in a very good direction.
Yeah, what comes up for me is it's like self-love on a planetary scale. You know, it's moving from high time preference to low time preference, and maybe one could say no time preference at all, because we have these expectations for how our life should be resulting, how society should be working, how other people should be living their lives, how we should be getting along. And I think it's kind of a seeing the forest through the trees type thing. It's not about the result, right? That's what low and high time preference really means. It's like, you know, what is the result, and how long are you willing to wait to get there? And in the case of low time preference, I suppose it's on the right track, but because it is an expression of appreciation for the journey, but it's still a focus on the end result. But if we look at it like no time preference, meaning we don't actually care about the outcome, but instead we have faith that the outcome is going to be the result of self-love, is going to be the result of this evolution and connection to each of our authentic truths,
And
then it's the
trusting the
journey.
process.
Yeah, it's the process and the journey
Trusting the
that actually
process. Sure.
matters. Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about no time preference though, because time preference is one of the most important tools of the ego to keep us alive. You eat now, you sleep now, you go to the bathroom now. You do these things to take care of the organism and to have a sense of cause and effect, have an understanding for cause and effect, and just taking care of your immediate needs that need to be taken care of now. But but we're learning to prioritize as a species with greater awareness about time preference and having tools that actually influence our, like, surrounding ourselves with technologies that make us better, like Bitcoin. It makes us better as human beings, as individuals, because it helps the ego relax a little bit, in the sense that it provides for our future so that we can lower our time preference. And that is a beautiful gift that Bitcoin gives us. It allows the ego to not be so stressed about the world. And just being on this trajectory of building technology that actually elevates us and makes us better is so much better than what we have been doing up until now, or not up until now, but very recently with a lot of social media technologies where we exploit our cognitive biases and our cognitive and emotional and psychological and spiritual weaknesses for engagement. I don't think that's the way to go. Technology that actually serves us, and having the spiritual enlightenment to actually see, and the intelligence to see when technologies benefit us and serve us and elevate us rather than just exploit us.
Yeah, you had mentioned this war for consciousness. I think that was the term, war. But
what's a war on consciousness?
Yeah,
And
war on consciousness.
we are fighting back with a war for consciousness.
Mm.
I have a deep-seated belief that every human being has a fundamental right from birth to their own consciousness. It's a spiritual right. It's your consciousness is a property that should never be corruptible through legislation by a state. The state is an idea far below consciousness. In the Neoplatonistic view of the world, consciousness comes first, the state comes much, much later. So consciousness and the right to consciousness holds precedence over the state. Still, the state has engaged in a war against consciousness and tried to legislate, try to encroach on your consciousness in ways that are very anti-human. I believe it's every individual's right to do with his or her consciousness as he or she pleases. And it is a major encroachment on human beings, the right of human beings, to create laws that threaten you with fines, or even removing yourself from freedom and put you in a cage, if you want to use consciousness expansion tools. The war against consciousness has tried to legislate away your right to your consciousness by criminalizing consciousness tools and medicines and practices. This is symptomatic of a medieval institution. It's primitive. It's harmful. We have the right to our bodies. We have the right to our consciousnesses. No one else does. When the state engages in a war on consciousness, it is the equivalent of them encroaching on your rights on who you go to bed with, or what rights the color of your skin gives you. The state cannot determine these things. They don't have the right. Nobody has that right. So what they are doing when they're criminalizing consciousness tools and medicines is very anti-human, and it's criminal. So if I sentence you, Caleb, for from freedom, I put you in a cage for using a consciousness expansion tool. If I sentence you, history is going to remember me as the criminal, not you. And I firmly believe that every individual in a position of power should do a couple of ayahuasca sessions. There's no world where that world wouldn't be a better place than this one for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. How do you think that we evolved from this fundamental inherent consciousness to this new, this not new, but this system of warring against it, I guess?
I'm sorry, can you ask the question again?
So the fundamental underpinning of our lives is the right to our consciousness, or the consciousness itself.
Yes.
And if each of us have this, even the ones that are in the institutions, how did we evolve to a point where some people have their consciousness being oppressed and the others are the oppressors?
Oh, no, we didn't evolve into that. We are evolving away from that. We are all oppressors. We are all violent monkeys.
Okay.
But more and more people are awakening, discovering love, discovering low time preference, discovering presence. Being awake is not a binary thing. You awaken in multiple facets of life. I remember, like, you have an awakening when you're born. You awaken to the physicality of the world. You have eyesight. You are no longer alone in the world. There are other things in the world. And when you're an adolescent, you discover that you have a voice in your head that you can use as a tool. And you have cognition. You can think about things, and you can think about thinking. You have not just a voice in your head and thoughts, but you can actually use them for things. And then you have another awakening when you realize that, oh, this voice, that's not me. These emotions, they aren't me. This name that I have, this body that I am, this idea that I have created, this identity, it's not me. It's an illusion. It doesn't exist. It's just an illusion. The I am loving awareness. I am the silent observer of every process that goes on in this organism. The voice in the head, the thoughts, the emotions, the sensations. And then you have more and more kinds of adjacent awakenings, a financial awakening, seeing that the way that we organize society is not necessarily how we should be organized in society. And you wake up to different ideas. And this is an ongoing process. And then you have to also live what you believe. And that is the process of self-alignment. And radical self-alignment is difficult. Discovering your primary archetype and moving towards that. Calibrating your compass and moving towards that. And that is where human beings are now. Some people are capable of waking up, others aren't, but more and more people are, because we are flooding the world with knowledge, ideas, and technology that give us, and political systems and culture that gives us the space and the tools that we need to wake up. And on a long enough horizon, we are becoming a globally spiritually enlightened species, where we have technologies like a human hive mind. I've argued before that the internet is our first Kardashev type 1 technology. It revolutionized global information exchange and communication. And we can now talk on a planetary scale in a way that we couldn't before. But the Internet 2.0 is not yet here, but we are going to develop it. And Internet 2.0 is going to be the human hive mind, telepathy, where we communicate through our thoughts and maybe even send value on this through this hive mind, where we make Bitcoin transactions with our thoughts. And when we have this technology, it's just an engineering problem. It's not magic at all. It's basically just brain-computer interfaces of some kind. I don't have the insight to say what they're going to be like. I'm not sure it's going to be a chip installed in the mind. I don't know what the interface is going to be. But and of course, all of the hurdles that we have to overcome, like privacy and so on. These are challenges on the way, but the direction that we're moving is becoming a Kardashev type 1 civilization, where we communicate like a type 1 civilization on a planetary scale through a human hive mind. That's the direction we're moving.
Yeah, and I think it can be scary to consider all these changes, but it can also be beautiful. Like you said, with Bitcoin, it can be turned into an insanely oppressive tool, or it can be used for freeing ourselves and connecting to that deeper element of who we are and evolving into that deepest element of who we are. It's really up to us. That's the beauty of sovereignty.
Yes.
So, Ioni, I wanted to go more deeply into your psychedelic trips as much as you'd be willing to share. I know that they're personal, but we're actually kind of approaching our times, and I think it would make more sense to dedicate an entire episode to talking more deeply about some of those sessions. Yeah. So I think kind of a good place for us to wrap up today would be if you could, if there's anything else that you feel like saying, then by all means. But the question that came up for me then is if you have any advice for the audience about expressing self-love and attuning to their authenticity.
I appreciate the question. The issue I have with it, it's that there's no answer that can be tailored to a large audience.
Yeah.
It has to be individual. I mean, just recognizing that you are a human being and that you're doing your best to honor the human experience, that you try to be present as much as you can and intensely present and practice that muscle to whether it's being intensely present in your body or being intensely present with your dog. Allowing yourself to feel the anticipatory grief of loss, because someday you are going to bury your parents. I buried my father 8 years ago now. Still feels like a month ago. And just knowing that loss is going to come, everything is going to disappear of this human experience. Someday there's going to be nothingness, blackness. Your identity, your ego, everything that exists, all of this, being awake, is going to disappear. And just allowing yourself to feel the grief of that and also love what you have right now. Allowing that dichotomy to exist and be not set up any resistance to what is. Just meditate with the flower, meditate with the plant, and learn from it that there's no resistance to what is. And just have integrity. The plant is not resisting what is. And it has full integrity. It is what it is. And you can learn that from a plant. And try to define your primary archetype. Navigate the world with your emotions and with your intellect. And define your primary archetype. And make real world changes to move towards that person. What needs to change about you for you to become who you truly are? Do you need to be physically, mentally, spiritually stronger to have the courage to make the leap? Then read the books, meditate. If you're so inclined, have a psychedelic ceremony responsibly and well planned. Practice lowering your time preference. And learn to observe your thoughts and your emotions in your body and know when you're out of balance. When you're not, it's okay to be out of balance. Just know that you're moving in the right direction that you have set for yourself. Are you on the path? There are dips on the path. There are challenges, and that's fine. But move in the direction of the compass that you set for radical self-alignment towards your primary archetype. And that's the journey. And you just have to be on the journey. Give it time. Give it space. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. Honor the human experience. And don't deny love.
Beautiful. I love it. Ioni, how can people follow your work and get your book, or if you want to give a medium for people to get in touch with you?
I'm active on Twitter, X, Ioni Appelberg, IONIAPPELBERG. I also have a YouTube channel where I make a whiteboard explaining videos about Bitcoin and the philosophical aspects of Bitcoin. Also, Ioni Appelberg on YouTube. My book, Abundance Through Scarcity, is available on Amazon and bitcoinbook.shop. I will be signing copies at BTC Prague this year. Maybe Honey Badger Riga. I'm not sure yet. I'm doing a keynote talk on BTC Prague about Bitcoin and the Kardashev scale, and I will be signing Abundance Through Scarcity. And it's being released in a second edition, and it is very, very good. I'm very, very pleased with how the second edition came out. And yeah, that's where you reach me, Twitter and YouTube, and get the book. I'm biased, but I truly feel and believe that this is one of the most important books in the Bitcoin space. Pair it with the Bitcoin standard, and you are pretty much covered. Because I take the long-term perspective on Bitcoin and zoom out and see look at the importance of Bitcoin for the future of human civilization and explore the philosophical aspects of Bitcoin, and pairing that with the economical aspects and laid out in the Bitcoin standard, and maybe pair that with Andreas Antonopoulos's Mastering Bitcoin, and you are set.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Ioni. It was an awesome conversation. I very much enjoyed it, and I think a lot of people will too.
Thank you, Caleb. I enjoyed this. Nice having a conversation with you.